Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Here where we need ya. Here where we need ya. Yeah, the tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back. All right, give it a stretch. Okay, that's good. Okay. All right. All right, welcome back to untilit.works. Hopefully that last work session was a productive one for you. For me, I'm almost done with the post radio show promo stuff. I'm trying to think where this thing that I'm looking for could have disappeared to. Because the thing is, like, I'll put something somewhere, and unless I continuously remind myself that that thing is there, I will forget about it. And I'll remember at the time, like, I put that thing there. But then, since I don't use it, I'm like, so I have no clue where I put it. Because I don't remember the last situation that I did it, that I needed it. You know what I'm saying? It's the thing I don't use at all. It just so happens that I want to do something and I need that thing. And yeah, it's fine. All right. But I did order something that'll hopefully help me. Like, it'll put it in a thing that'll be big enough to where it's like, that's where it is. You know what I'm saying? So it's fine. All right. So for this break, I figured I want to take a look at this thing that I kind of came across. Now, for context, like, my CSS is very, very basic. Like, I do kind of like the basics of CSS because I'm not my projects, like, they don't really require a lot of styling. I'm more into the functionality of it and making it as, like, straightforward to use. You know what I'm saying? So I don't need a lot of stuff to kind of make it. I just need it to work, right? And so I never really got into CSS nesting yet. You know what I'm saying? I've been more messing around with, like, the CSS transitions because that helps, transition between pages. For me, that's, like, more functional. And, so a lot of my CSS stuff is functional things, like placing things and like the transition stuff. So nothing really, like, visual too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, it helps with putting things in order, but as long as it's in order and it works, I don't really care how it looks, as long as it's accessible. You know what I'm saying? And that the what do you call it? What's the thing? The color, not color ratio, but the thing where, like, you can actually read it. You know what I'm saying? Like, the two colors aren't too close to where it's difficult for reading. You know what I mean? So I try to make it as accessible as possible. Now, along with the CSS nesting stuff, apparently, I was kind of like reading through this article, but this is mostly for folks who are into the CSS may not have seen this because this article just kind of like came out, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it. So, all right. So, CSS nesting improves with CSS nested declarations. All right. So, I eventually plan on getting into CSS because I can see like the usefulness and be able to nest CSS. But apparently might be like an issue or something, right? So, like it says, so shouts to Brahmas. So, to fix some weird quirks with CSS nesting, so that's a good thing to know that there's some weird quirks, because if I tried it and it didn't come out the way I thought it would come out, I'd be like, well, damn. So, all right, so to fix some weird quirks with CSS nesting, the CSS working group resolved to add CSS nested declarations interface to the CSS nesting specification. And this links to the working group and all that stuff, so you can check it out. With this addition, declarations that come after style rules no longer shift up, among some other improvements. All right. So with this thing now, you don't have to worry about that weird quirk that they were talking about before. All right. And he has an example of, like, that weird quirk. So These changes are available in Chrome from version 130. And I checked because it wasn't coming out, like the solution wasn't working. And there was like a little thing, and I'll show it. It'll say like, well, your thing doesn't support CSS nested declarations, right? And so I'll show that. And then I went to look, I'm like, what version am I on? And then it automatically downloaded, I think, a newer version. So it's waiting for me to refresh or whatever. But so I guess you can also check also. But it's so from Chrome version 130 and on, right? And are ready for testing in Firefox Nightly 132 and Safari Technology Preview 204. All right. So now the problem with CSS nesting without the CSS nested declarations. And so I guess if you're not 130, well, then if you don't have this, you're going to have the quirks, I guess. So this section describes the old nesting behavior. The new behavior with CSS nested declarations is described later in this document. All right. So one of the gotchas with CSS nesting, and then this goes to a person's blog post, so shouts to them, is that originally the following snippet does not work as you might initially expect. And so again, I've never really done a lot of CSS nesting, or at all, pretty much. And so this, I don't know what to expect by looking at this, right? So, but if I'm looking at the width, you know what I'm saying, is going to fit the content of it. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you can have the width, like the whole 100%, but then that, like the whole thing of the parent container. So with width content, it's the width of that tech of the stuff that's inside of .foo, of the class foo. So then at media screen, I think this is because I think there's like at media print, and that's if you're going to print it, if you wanted to style it a certain way. And then screen is if it's on the screen. So the background color red. But then you set, I guess, like kind of like a default background color green. So I guess maybe if it was like, if you were to print it, it would have background color green. Not sure. But so looking at the code, you would assume that the div class foo element has a green background color because the background -green declaration comes out last. So that's what they're saying here. But that isn't the case in Chrome before version 130. In those versions, which lack the support for that CSS nested declarations, the background color of the element is red. Which I would think, because wouldn't it mean that, because at media screen, wouldn't that be more specific, I guess? I'm not sure. Again, because that's how I would think of it, because like you're specifying, hey, if it's on a screen, make the background color red, regardless of whatever is here. You know what I'm saying? Like even if this was on top of that, because it's at media, that's why I would think that. I don't know. You know, let me rabbit hole real quick. I want to make sure that this at media screen thing, because again, I don't do a lot of media screen. I want to make sure that is what I think it does. You know what I'm saying? MDN. I'm looking at MDN real quick. Looking for the screen thing. Here we go. All right, so let me share this real quick. So I guess it is kind of like what I was saying. And so like here it is. So this is the media page. I'm going to save a link to this as well, so you can check that out for yourself. All right, so yeah, so screen intended primarily for screens, and then the print intended for page materials and documents viewed on a screen in print preview mode. Okay, so yeah, so well, they actually have some additional ones: TTY, TV, projection, handheld, braille, embossed, aural. I guess that's audio kind of. That's pretty dope. So they're adding more stuff. That's super dope. All right, random side tangent, but yeah, okay. So for me, I would have thought that this would be more specific and thus taking that. So let's see what they say. After parsing, the actual Chrome prior to 130 uses is as follows. So you have this, the fit content, you do the background green, and then it has this thing here. All right, so this is what it ends up being. All right, so the CSS after parsing underwent two changes. The background color green got shifted up to join the two other declarations. All right. The nested CSS media rule was rewritten to wrap its declarations in an extra CSS style rule using the ampersand selector. So it kind of like adds it to it, right? So another typical change that you'd see here is the parser discarding properties it does not support. Okay, makes sense. So now you can expect the CSS after parsing for yourself by reading back the CSS text of the CSS style rule. So there's a lot of stuff. I'm like, what? And then you can try it out in this interactive playground. So they have a code pen here, right? And so I was kind of like going through it before, right? And so, so we have this thing here, but then the problem is that the parse CSS, your browser does not support CSS nested declarations. So expect some differences compared to the inputs. And then, so it wouldn't work for me, I guess. So I have to like restart my browser. So why is this CSS rewritten? To understand why this internal rewrite happened, you need to understand how the CSS style rule gets represented in the CSS object model. This is a whole lot of stuff just like randoms over my head, but it's a good like learning opportunity for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I would look up like CSS object model. You know what I'm saying? I would look up CSS style rule if I had time. But right now, this is kind of like stuff like, oh, okay, cool. So in Chrome before 130, the CSS snippet shared earlier serializes to the following. So this is kind of like how the DOM looks, I guess, as far as CSS. You know what I'm saying? And so then we have the CSS rule. Again, this is what they talk about here. And then the type is style rule. The selector is that .foo. And then resolved selector text, again, is that .foo. And then specificity, which I'm not sure how this works out. So again, what I do is I would go look that up and see what this means. And then the style, so the CSS style declaration, then I have to figure out what this number 2 means. So maybe there's 2 of them, maybe that's what that means. And so the width and the background color. Cool. Then we have the CSS rules, rule list. Maybe it means like there's 1 of that because there's only that media rule. And then it added that ampersand there. And then if it's foo, then do that stuff here, the background color red. Okay, so yes, I'm thinking these mean like how many of those things there are. Okay, all right. So the resolved selector text, so note this, property is not part of the CSS OM yet. There's a lot of stuff happening here. It was manually added to show what the resolved selector looks like. The specificity property was also injected for demonstration purpose. So maybe, okay, so specificity maybe not be a thing. I'm not sure. So all of the properties that a CSS style rule has, the following 2 are relevant in this case. So the style property, which is these things here, right? Cool. And the CSS rules property. CSS rules. Okay. I think that's what they're saying. So now, because all declarations from the CSS snippet end up in the style property of the CSS style rule, there is a loss of information. When looking at the style property, it is not clear that the background color green was declared after. Okay, so yeah, so in the way they order it, you see here's the green first, and then the red is later because of the CSS rule stuff here. Because the style did it there. But then the style is here later in that CSS rules, which I guess comes after that. Okay. Again, I have no clue what I'm talking about here. This is problematic because for a CSS engine to work properly, it must be able to distinguish properties that appear at the start of the style's rule contents from those that appear interspersed with other rules. Okay. So they go through a bunch of stuff, then how to solve this, and said looked into several options to solve this problem. One of the suggested solutions was to wrap all bare declarations in a nested CSS style rule with the nesting selector ampersand. This idea was discarded for various reasons, including the following unwanted side effects of ampersand desugaring the is thing selector. I think is selector. I think it's called. It has an effect on specificity. This is because the is selector takes over the specificity of its most specific argument. Again, over my head. So I'd have to go back and like reread this a lot slower. And it does not work well with pseudo elements in the original outer selector. That is because is selector does not accept pseudo elements in its selector list argument. Ooh, that's a lot of stuff. And then they go through this here. So it's kind of like the thing before, and then but they like added more things to it. Yeah, this is a lot of stuff here. Like it is breaking my brain. And so if CSS is ever like difficult for you, it's fine because there's a lot of stuff happening. Just understand that it is like can get complex. And so yeah. So check it out. You know what I'm saying? Some more information if you want to. So if you ever do CSS nesting and you run into like some weird like gotchas, some quirks, you can check out this article to hopefully maybe help break it down a little bit better. I think I'm the type of person, if I don't run into the error, then like learning this doesn't really help because I can't apply it to that thing that I'm running into error with. You know what I'm saying? Right now it's just like, oh, it's like ephemeral. Like it's like in a fantasy world for me right now. I've never actually ran into the issue. It's not real to me. And so, but if anybody's ever come into this with this style CSS nesting, if you ever come to this issue, at least there's something here. All right. So cool. Let me get y'all back to work because I really need to find this thing. So I'm gonna go look around some more for it. I'm almost done with the post radio show promo stuff. But when we come back, we'll take a look at an artist's website, maybe watch some videos, maybe listen to some tracks, maybe you become a fan. So I totally forgot to stop sharing my screen. Where is my mouse? And of course, now I lost my mouse. Here we go. All right, cool. Stop sharing screen. Cool. So I'm gonna get y'all back to work. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you 15 minutes after the hour. Till then, I wish you much productivity. And this right here is a track by Anthony Cruz, aka A Butta. The track's called Thank You. Thanks for hanging out. See you 15 minutes after the hour. Yeah, y'all be easy. Thanks for hanging out. Be easy. Peace.
I wanna say thank you for holding on when a brother was down and out. Now I feel so strong, and I wanna say thank you for being there when a brother had nowhere to turn to. You were there, and I feel like hell. And everybody says hell. We spread love like hell. I wanna say thank you for holding on when a brother was down and out.